All right, let's dive in. I've been going through this stack of material you sent, and it really hits this critical point where massive wealth concentration meets the changing role of our biggest financial institutions.
It really does. And our mission here is to unpack the central claim in these sources, that a series of policy shifts created what they call an antisocial contract.
An antisocial contract, and that, in turn, led to a so-called hoarding economy.
Exactly. The idea is that the economic rules were sort of rewritten to favor massive accumulation at the very top.
Okay, so let's get into that structural critique. The argument seems to be that policymakers, deliberately turn these policy dials on, things like taxes, finance, competition, to funnel wealth upwards.
Yes, and that effectively created two parallel economies. But the key consequence, and this number is just staggering, comes from a Rand Corporation study cited throughout this material.
I saw that, yeah.
It calculates that if those dials hadn't been turned to encourage hoarding between 1975 and 2018, the average middle-class and working-class family would have, well, collectively added an estimated $50 trillion to their balance sheets.
50 trillion. I mean, that's almost hard to comprehend. That's the scale of the transfer we're talking about.
That's the scale.
So for those who say these shifts were, necessary for efficiency, how exactly did this hoarding mechanism work, according to the sources?
Well, it was really a two-pronged thing. First, policymakers weakened antitrust laws, which reduced competition. And second, and this is critical, they reframed the entire social purpose of a corporation. The goal shifted away from long-term stability or community investment and toward one single thing: maximizing shareholder stock value.
And there's a direct line drawn from that shift to a major drag on the whole economy, right? Productivity growth is the key metric here.
A huge drag, yeah. Productivity was humming along at 2.8% a year from 48 to 73. But by the 2000s, it had fallen to just 1.2%.
And that kind of drop over decades, that's massive. It means the economic engine just isn't generating the same surplus.
Exactly. And you see the result in the wealth divergence. Even after all these economic expansions, the total net worth of the bottom 50% of Americans is actually 20% less than it was in 1990.
Wow. Which I think leads to this idea you flagged, negative stability. It's an aerospace term, but it's being applied here to economics.
Right. In engineering, it's a system where small shakes get worse and worse until the whole thing risks crashing.
So in this context, the shakes are what? Asset bubbles, recession.
Precisely. The argument is that hoarding wealth at the top creates this inherent instability, political and economic, that requires bigger and bigger interventions just to keep the system from breaking.
Okay, so that's the theory. But where do we see this playing out in a really tangible way? The sources point pretty directly at housing.
Yes, this is a perfect example. You see these huge financial players moving into spaces that were traditionally for, smaller investors, or just families. Look at Lloyds Banking Group in the UK.
The country's biggest retail bank.
They created a subsidiary, Citra Living, with the explicit goal of becoming a massive corporate landlord in the private rental market.
And the scale is what's key here. Their goal is reportedly to buy 50,000 homes by 2030. They can use the bank's super low funding costs and market data.
Advantages that a normal family trying to buy a home just can't compete with. It's the perfect illustration of hoarded capital being turned into asset accumulation in an absolutely essential sector.
So if turning the dials one way created the problem, is there a proposed fix for turning them back?
There is. They lay out a 4-dial anti-hoarding agenda. The most ambitious proposal is to actually tax unproductive hoarding to fund something called citizens' capital accounts.
So instead of trickle-down, this is designed to be gush-up economics.
That's the vision. You put capital directly into the hands of every American, giving them a real financial stake. The analogy they use is the NFL.
The NFL, how does that work?
Well, the league uses salary caps and the draft to keep any one team from hoarding all the talent. It ensures broad competition, which actually makes the entire league, the whole enterprise, more valuable for everyone.
Ah, I see. So the idea is that dispersing capital ownership makes the whole system more resilient and productive because that money gets put to use right away in local economies.
Exactly. But before we finish, we do have to point out a really sharp disagreement within these sources on our current tax system.
Absolutely. Some sources make the case that the federal income tax is, in fact, highly progressive. They point out that the wealthiest 1% pay about 40% of all federal income taxes.
True, but other analyses fire back that that's a narrow view. If you factor in all taxes, sales, property, payroll, and measure it against total wealth, not just income,
Then the picture changes.
completely. By that measure, they argue the effective rate for the top 1% is actually much lower than for the other 99%.
Yeah.
It really depends on what you're measuring.
A fascinating tension right at the heart of this whole debate.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over. Adam Smith's very first principle of taxation was that people should contribute in proportion to their interest in the estate, basically their wealth. So the question is, how far have we strayed from that idea, and what are the real long-term costs of that divergence?
Okay, let's dive in. Today we're looking at a set of sources that make a pretty profound claim. Some critics have called it the algorithm of debt slavery. The core idea is that our monetary system isn't just inefficient, it's actually designed to create scarcity.
Even when there's plenty to go around. It's
Yeah.
a total inversion of what you'd expect, right?
Exactly.
There's this satirical poem, The Oyster, and it just captures it perfectly. You have the banker and the economist literally weeping.
Weeping.
Yeah, weeping to see such plenty in the land. For them, abundance is a curse. Scarcity is where the gain is.
And that scarcity, that pressure is the foundation. I'm thinking of the ragged, trousered philanthropists. It describes a system that just forces everyone into this brutal fight for limited resources.
Right, it compels self-interest. The sources argue that this is why the digital world today can feel so coercive, like a hellscape, which is so different from the real-world abundance we could have.
So how does that work mechanically?
Well, you have to look at Owen's great money trick.
Yeah.
It's the best demonstration.
Okay.
So imagine Owen is the capitalist. He owns the raw materials, let's say it's bread, and he owns the knives to cut it, the means of production.
Got it.
He pays his workers 1 sovereign for a week's work.
A single sovereign. Okay, but then here's the trick. Right?
Here's the trick. He immediately sets the price for a block of bread, what they need to survive, at exactly 1 sovereign.
So they have to hand the money right back to him.
Instantly. Just to eat. So at the end of the week, the workers are left with nothing, and they have to come back to work. Meanwhile, Owen has the bread, the money, all of it.
It's a closed loop. And that brings us to the money itself, doesn't it? The tool. Alexander Del Mar argued value isn't physical, like gold. It's just a ratio.
That's the key critique. He says our unit of value, the dollar, is legally undefined. It's a variable. And, how can you measure anything with a ruler that's constantly changing length?
You can't. It's absurd when you think about it.
And that's where the system becomes a trap. Usury, or interest, is what the sources call serfdom by stealth. There's sort of mathematical proof for it. If money is created as debt with positive interest, then as time goes on, it's a mathematical certainty that all purchasing power eventually drains back to the original issuer.
Because more money is owed back than was ever created?
Precisely. The interest has to come from somewhere. It guarantees accumulation for the few.
Wow. Okay, so that makes the whole topic of taxation even more important, because we're not paying taxes in government-printed cash anymore, are we? It's all electronic.
This is electronic bookkeeping entries, yeah. And the crucial part is who issues them. It's not just the government.
It's the central bank working with the private banks.
Right, what the sources call a state-sanctioned banking cartel. This creates a system of dual sovereignty.
Dual sovereignty, meaning control over the nation's spending power is shared between the government and this private cartel.
Exactly. So the solution offered isn't about raising or lowering tax rates. It's about changing the very medium of payment.
So what? Making it so taxes can only be paid in money directly issued by the government.
That's the idea. It would mean abandoning the fractional reserve system for public accounts. It's a fundamental structural reform, not a political one. It puts sovereignty back where it belongs.
It all comes back to a parable from Henry George I was reading about the tethered bill.
Oh, yeah.
This powerful animal, suffering from want right in a field of plenty, all because it lacks the, quote, wit enough to see how he might be free.
And that's what this exploration is really about. It's about seeing the tether.
So we should probably leave people with a final thought.
I think so. Let's use one from John Ruskin. He had this very different idea of what an economy was for. He said the merchant's duty was to provide for the nation and, on occasion, to die for it.
A world away from just accumulation.
A world away. So if our current economic machine ensures wealth funnels upwards through interest and debt, it leaves a big question for everyone to think about.
Which is?
What should the true purpose of the economy be for the many who actually do the work? Provisioning society or accumulating wealth? It's something to really consider.
Alright, let's delve into a topic that may just capture your interest: the algorithm of debt slavery. Now, I know it sounds rather dramatic, but bear with me. The way we perceive money, taxation, and, wealth, or more accurately, the scarcity of it, has become this intricate web that often feels more like a trap than a safety net.
Wow, wait. Are you suggesting that, we're basically enslaved by this system? That's a bit much. What does that mean for us? Like, as individuals just trying to make a living? Do you have, examples?
Oh, absolutely. Picture this. You embark on the journey to start your small business, pouring in your passion and savings. But right from the outset, taxes come in, some local, some national. It feels a bit like running uphill, doesn't it? Every time you believe you're gaining ground, there's a new fee, a regulation, or a tax audit looming overhead. It's no wonder so many entrepreneurs decide to surrender.
Yikes, that sounds really demotivating. But what about that electronic currency you mentioned earlier? How does that tie into all of this?
That's where it gets exceptionally intriguing. We've transitioned from tangible currency like coins and notes into the realm of electronic currency dominated by big banking cartels. Imagine if the government had an exclusive monopoly over crafting money. It would be like granting the keys to the royal treasury to a select group of bankers. Ideally, the government should distribute money, but it has blurred lines that distort our entire economic landscape.
Right, so it's like two kings ruling over the same kingdom. But, how does that actually mess with our day-to-day lives, like when merchants and other folks are trading stuff?
Precisely. It's exactly that scenario. If you think about merchants, the backbone of any economy, they are navigating through this chaos. Their values aren't determined by the intrinsic quality of their goods, but rather by this convoluted mixture of monetary policy and market speculation. It's like trying to sell lemonade on the corner, where a shady guy controls all the prices. Quite the battle, isn't it?
Haha, I can totally visualize that. It's like a little lemonade stand owner battling the market bully. But, didn't philosophers like Aristotle have opinions on value and money back in the day?
Absolutely. Philosophers have been engaging in debates about the notion of value for centuries. Aristotle posited that value isn't a fixed entity. It's more like a tango between seller and buyer. Their perceptions fluctuate. Then, our old friend usury swoops in, the practice of profiting off lending money at interest. That's where things take a darker turn, leading to a cyclic debt situation that can really stifle entire communities.
Wow, that's heavy. So you're saying our perception of value can drastically shift based on circumstances or climate. And with debt, could you explain how the bankers keep this whole system alive?
Certainly. Bankers thrive by controlling the value of money. Their existence hinges upon it. If prices fluctuate, it significantly impacts their credit systems and the value of loans. The central banking systems wield power akin to that of an emperor. They dictate how much money gets printed and how interest rates shift. It's a strategic game, my friend, and in this game, most of us are unfortunately mere pawns.
That feels like a real-life Hunger Games scenario. So, what can we do as individuals to escape this debt slavery? Is there a way, to break free?
Well, it begins with awareness. Understanding these systemic structures is crucial to reclaiming our power. We need to advocate for transparent economic transactions and challenge corrupt practices. I genuinely believe there's hope. People fervently desire justice and equity in economic relations. It's about shifting the narrative from mere survival to thriving.
Wow, so there's an escape route, huh? That's incredibly empowering. Do you think there are actual movements towards that? Or is it all just, talk?
Oh, movements are springing up, trust me. From local community currencies to grassroots economic models, genuine change is taking shape. But it all necessitates a mindset shift, grasping our value beyond just numbers. By emphasizing connections, collaboration, and community, we can carve out a space that isn't dictated by these oppressive systems.
That's really uplifting. It's like discovering a hidden treasure map in a world full of traps. It encourages me to approach economic choices differently. Thank you for shedding light on all this. It's been, enlightening.
Many years ago, there lived an emperor who cared so enormously for beautiful new clothes that he spent all his money on them. He had a coat for every hour of the day. Then one day, two cheats came, a weaver and a tailor. They persuaded the emperor and courtiers that they could weave beautiful clothes that only people who are stupid cannot see. They would be capital clothes, thought the emperor. And he gave the two cheats a great deal of cash in hand so that they might begin their work at once. They immediately demanded the finest silk and the costliest gold. This they put into their own pockets and worked at the empty looms till late at night. Everyone pretended they could see the cloth the weaver was making. The night before the procession, the weaver and tailor pretended to be hard at work completing the clothes. Now the clothes are ready. When the emperor put on the new clothes, he said, "One would think one had nothing on at all, they are so light." The procession began, and everyone pretended they could see the clothes, until at last a child in the crowd shouted out, "Oh look, he's got nothing on!" And then straight away, the whole crowd shouted, "He has nothing on!" Hans Christian Andersen doesn't say what happened to the cheats.